Hello again, and welcome to Denton's Tales. You know, I often laugh when I see someone say, I am a Viking! I live the Viking way! Arr! Yes, well, you see, I'm sorry to tell you that saying skull every 5 minutes, declaring your intention of going to Valhalla, wearing the Hammer of Thor, and having some tattoos of questionable historic accuracy does not make you a Viking. No, I'm afraid it doesn't. Apart from really needing to be Scandinavian, to be a Viking, you would need a ship and you would have to go somewhere in the ship and you would have to do something or other whenever you got to wherever you got to in the ship, like raiding, which of course is rather frowned on nowadays. So, probably the police would almost certainly stop you doing that. Or, of course, you could trade or sell things. You could set up a new village or a town somewhere or explore the unknown. No, of course, you can't really do any of those things now in our modern age, can you? Due to all kinds of rules and regulations, import controls, health and safety, customs charges, planning regulations, and so on. So I'm afraid Vikingness, in the actual correct sense of that, is something that no, you can't really do. But the same can be said for many who claim to follow the Old Norse religion, because that is something that is virtually impossible to do. And not, of course, the veneration of the gods themselves. Of course, that is perfectly fine. But to venerate them as the Old Norse did, well, no, because we have almost no idea of what that actually was from a practicing point of view. We know who the old Norse gods were, of course, Odin, Freya, Thor, and so on. We know their attributes. We know many stories associated with them. We can feel a connection with them. We can honor them. But we can't practice the old Norse religion because we don't know how. We don't know what it was in actual practice. We could recreate a Christian Mass from the 11th, 12th, 13th century because we have the script, you might say. We know the words, the prayers. We even have musical notation for hymns. But that's not the case with the religious practices of ancient Scandinavia. And of course, there's a very simple reason for that. They never wrote them down. A good a good analogy would be that if all you knew about Shakespeare's play Hamlet was that Hamlet's father was murdered by his uncle, he's really annoyed about that. He sees ghosts and things. He plans revenge. His girlfriend dies, and at the end, well, just about everybody dies. But how could you perform Shakespeare's Hamlet exactly as it was? Because you don't have a script. That is exactly the case with the Old Norse religion. We know much of what they believed in, but not how they actually worshipped the gods. I've seen people say that they want nothing to do with Ossacru or Odinism or any variations of pagan belief because that's not genuine. That's not genuine Norse religion. That's not what the Vikings did. But you see, nobody knows what the Old Norse did. Their incantations, their prayers, their ceremonies. We can't recreate those observances because we simply don't know what they were. Things are mentioned in the Icelandic sagas, but not the words that were said, not how to perform those things. So any accurate modern version is impossible. Yes, we could worship the old gods, pray to them, have elaborate ceremonies. Yes, we could do all that, but that would not be Old Norse religion. That would not be the way they did it. It would be little more than guesswork based on what we know of other shamanic traditions, ranging from Roman accounts of the Gauls to traditions that still existed more recently, some of them still with us today, like the Sami or the Slavic shamans of Russia. But there is no guarantee that those traditions and ceremonies were anything like the Old Norse ones, and they vary considerably themselves from place to place. Much of the Old Norse religion, of course, was the prerogative of the völva, singular, or the volor, plural, practitioners of magic and foretellers of the future. They were seers, sometimes called knowing women for that reason. And nothing like the seer in the television show Vikings. For one thing, he's a man, and for another, well, why they have him resembling a reanimated Egyptian mummy, I really don't know, because there's no reason. There's no reason for that. And, there are many mentions of what the Völva did in the sagas, but that isn't much help to us, because while we know much of what they did, we don't know how they did it. And that's very important. For example, in the saga of Eric the Red, we are told how a Völva performed a dance, standing up on a special platform of some kind, so she could see beyond our world. Something that is mentioned in other sagas. A Völva would be up on something, be it a chair, a ladder, or just lifted up by the men, enabling her to see far into the future. And she would sing special songs, magic tunes they were called, to summon the powers she wished to communicate with, assisted by young women joining in the singing, to establish a link with the spirits, a sort of backing group, you might say, as she went into a trance-like state. Now, this act of being up to see further into the future, that seems to have been a very common thing with the Völva. And the magic tunes, and later an Arab traveller called Ahmed ibn Fadlan witnessed a Rus ceremony, and he mentions a young woman being lifted up. So we know that that was part of Norse religious practice. But what did the young woman say when she was lifted up? What words did she use? What songs were sung? We have no idea. So while we could take someone and hold her up in the air, that's not going to achieve any actual Norse religious practice. Now, of course, that wasn't actual worship of the gods, of course, but a ceremony nonetheless, and one that we can't repeat. Oh, yes, as I said, we can lift a woman up in the air, but what does she say? What words does she use? We can sing songs, but again, what are the words? What is the melody? Therein lies the problem with any attempt to practice Old Norse ceremonies. Völva danced or chanted and so forth. We know about the magic tune, and that women sang to accompany them. We know they were raised up to see the future, but we don't know what the actual words were that they used, or details of how the animal bones and talismans were used, which we know they had, but we don't know in what way they used them, how were they placed, or what was the wording that was said, of any incantations that were said over them. We don't know any special gestures or signs that may have been used. There were quite possibly Old Norse equivalents of the Christian blessing, but we don't know. So recreating them, well, is impossible. In the poem Havamal from the Poetic Edda, Odin tells of 18 magic songs that he knows, songs to cast spells. Now, he's talking about Galdr, a form of magic involving singing and chanting, and these are referred to as the 18 spell songs of Odin, stanzas 145 to 164 of Havamal. And he goes into great detail of what each song does and the fact that he knows these songs. So, since you can read about these spell songs in Havamal, can you perform them yourself? Well, no. No, you can't. You see, Odin knew quite a lot of things, which he goes to great lengths to tell us, but unfortunately, he didn't share any of that great knowledge, simply listing all the magic songs used to cast spells, saying what those spells would accomplish, but nowhere does he say anything about the words to use or how to perform the actual casting of the spells, just that he knows how to do it, which was wonderful for him, but that knowledge doesn't help us very much. So here we have quite detailed accounts of magical practices, yet we are totally unable to use them ourselves to recreate them. And similar detailed accounts of actual religious worship they're almost non-existent. A sacrifice may be mentioned or a plea to the gods, but nothing that would enable us to do the same thing ourselves. This is why, fierce debates over who is practicing the genuine Old Norse religion. My version, this is the correct one. This is what the Vikings did. No, it's not. No, we do what the Vikings did. No, you don't. This is completely pointless because nobody is practicing genuine Old Norse religion. Also true, Odin is traditional pagan or any other group you care to mention. None of them are 100% genuine, authentic, original Old Norse religious practices. Even some of the symbols associated with the religion, such as the helm of Or, are not genuinely Old Norse. That comes from much later representations, and it's not even always drawn the same way. Yes, it's mentioned in the old tales, yes, but we don't know what it actually looked like, and it may not even have been an object as such. There are suggestions that it was a power rather than an actual physical object. The same gods, of course, yes, Odin, Freya, Thor, Frigg, and so on. And various ceremonies may be very similar to what the Old Norse may have done based on later shamanic practices, but there's no way to know that. We can't say that that one is more accurate than that one, or indeed if any of them are accurate. If you follow the old gods, you are doing what the peoples of Scandinavia did thousands of years ago, because you are honoring them in your thoughts and your words as they did, which is very good. But you are not doing it exactly as they did. You can't say you are practicing their religion as they practiced it, since any question of which particular practices are the correct ones is completely pointless. That you are following their religion in that you are honoring their gods, yes, that you are doing. You know, different forms that one might do. You know, some might be correct, some might not. All of them could be correct, or none of them. We just have no way of knowing. I would say do what feels right, and if it feels right, then it's right for you. And you never know, that might be historically right. Maybe you have been guided to that by a higher power. And, I'm sure that Odin and Freya and Thor, they wouldn't really mind if you got a few things wrong. After all, it's the thought that counts. And if you are thinking about the old gods, well, I'm sure that alone would be enough to please them. Remember, the old gods live on as long as you remember them and honor them. That is the important thing. I hope you enjoyed this little video, and until next time I shall say farewell, goodbye, until then. Bye for now.